My greedy sister-in-law stormed into my brother's funeral, demanding that I transfer the $30 million company to her. Otherwise, she said she wouldn't allow me to start the proceedings. The lawyer stepped forward and presented the documents, which left her shocked. She slapped my face and stormed out of the place. I was filled with anger and decided to seek revenge. The very next day, she called me in a panic. In the heart of Atlanta, Georgia, my life had always felt like a carefully woven tapestry of love, ambition, and unexpected trials. I'm Carla, a 48-year-old part-time book editor, and I have spent years cultivating a rich family life with my husband, Frank, and our two wonderful children, Lucas and Mia. Frank is a successful entrepreneur, always juggling meetings and phone calls, yet he makes it a point to be present for our family. Lucas, our eldest at 17, dreams of becoming a doctor, while Mia, at 13, is just starting to discover who she wants to be. But beyond our home lies a complicated history, particularly with my older brother, Owen. He's always been more than just a brother to me. He has been my mentor, my rock, especially since we lost our parents in a tragic accident when we were younger. Owen, a well-respected financial consultant, has shaped my life and the lives of my children in ways that still surprise me. Mom, do you think Uncle Owen will come over for dinner tonight? Lucas asked one evening while I was preparing spaghetti in the kitchen. I hope so, sweetheart. He promised he would try, I replied, stirring the pot, memories of family dinners flooding back. Owen always brought a certain energy to the table. Yet, as much as I cherished our family gatherings, there was a shadow lurking in the background. Owen's marriage to Evelyn. Evelyn, a younger woman with an enigmatic presence, had a history that made me uneasy. From the beginning, I sensed her coldness, her fixation on Owen's wealth. The way she would roll her eyes during conversations or dismiss the family's efforts to connect left a bitter taste in my mouth. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. After all, she was my brother's wife, but it became increasingly difficult. Owen confided in me one day, his voice heavy with disappointment. Carla, I'm really struggling. Evelyn isn't the woman I thought she was. She's wrapped up in her own world, and I can't shake this feeling that she's with me for the money, not for love. That's tough, Owen. Have you talked to her about it? I asked, genuinely concerned. I've tried, but it's like talking to a wall. She's always involved in something shady, illegal business dealings, affairs. It's exhausting, he sighed. His frustration was palpable, and I could see the toll it was taking on him. Owen's disillusionment grew. He became increasingly distant from Evelyn, and it broke my heart to see him in such turmoil. In an attempt to protect his legacy, he made a decision that would ultimately change everything. One evening, while sipping coffee on my porch, he shared his plan with me. Carla, I'm transferring my estate and life insurance to you. I can't trust Evelyn anymore, not with my money or my heart, he confessed, his eyes glistening with determination. Are you sure about this? What if she finds out? I questioned, my heart racing. The thought of Evelyn discovering this made me uneasy. I don't care. I'd rather you have it than let her squander it. You and your family deserve it. If anything happens to me, I want my assets to benefit my true family, he explained, and I couldn't help but feel a mix of gratitude and worry. As Owen's condition deteriorated, I kept my worries at bay. I supported him in silence, feeling a sense of loyalty to my brother and the promise he made to safeguard his legacy. Tragically, everything took a dark turn one rainy afternoon. Owen was involved in a severe car accident. I remember getting the call as I was helping Mia with her homework. Carla, it's bad. Owen's in critical condition, the voice on the other end said, and my heart sank. I quickly dialed Evelyn, hoping she would care enough to come to the hospital. Evelyn, Owen's been in an accident. He's in critical condition, I said, my voice trembling. Is he still alive? She replied, almost flippantly, her indifference hitting me like a punch to the gut. I'll come when I can. With that, she hung up, leaving me reeling. How could she be so cold? I rushed to the hospital, anxiety gripping me. As I entered the emergency room, the beeping of machines and the sterile smell overwhelmed my senses. I found Owen lying unconscious, tubes surrounding him. Frank and the kids arrived shortly after, their faces filled with concern. "Uncle Owen, please be okay," Lucas whispered, holding Mia's hand tightly. I could see the worry etched on his face, and it broke my heart to think of the uncertainty that lay ahead. Hours turned into a blur, and despite my hopes, Owen never regained consciousness. The doctor finally delivered the news I had dreaded.
"I'm sorry."
We did everything we could, but he didn't make it. The world felt like it had stopped. I held Lucas and Mia close, tears streaming down my face. Owen was gone, and I couldn't shake the feeling that his troubled marriage had played a role in this tragedy. I knew Evelyn would come storming in, claiming her place, but I couldn't prepare myself for what would happen next. At Owen's funeral, the atmosphere was heavy with grief and disbelief. Friends and colleagues filled the church, all mourning a man who had inspired so many. But just as the service began, Evelyn burst through the doors, her presence strikingly out of place. "I want what's mine," she shouted, her voice echoing in the silent room. Everyone turned to stare, shock and disbelief washing over the mourners. What happened next would change everything, but I wasn't prepared for the revelations that awaited me. The tension in the church was palpable as Evelyn's outburst echoed in the solemn atmosphere. I stood frozen, a mixture of shock and disbelief washing over me. How could she be so brazen? Did she have no shame? The murmurs from the crowd grew louder, and I could see the expressions of confusion and concern on the faces of those who had come to honor Owen. "Evelyn, this isn't the time or place," I finally managed to say, my voice trembling with a blend of anger and sadness. "We're here to remember Owen, not to argue about money." "Oh, but it is the perfect time, Carla," she shot back, her eyes flashing with desperation. "Owen was my husband. I deserve what he left behind." The lawyer stepped forward, his brow furrowed with irritation. "Evelyn, I think you should sit down." "You have no claim to anything," he said firmly. The silence that followed was deafening as everyone turned to listen, caught up in the unfolding drama. "What do you mean?" she demanded, her voice rising. "He had a will. I am his wife." I felt my heart race as the lawyer took a deep breath and looked straight at her. "Owen transferred all his assets to Carla before the accident. You have no right to any of it." Evelyn's face drained of color, replaced by anger and disbelief. "You're lying." "He wouldn't do that," she shouted, her voice echoing in the quiet church. As the lawyer continued to explain the legal ramifications of the divorce, I watched Evelyn's composure unravel. She had always relied on her ability to manipulate situations to her advantage, but this was different. This was her husband's legacy, and she was being cut out completely. As the service continued, I felt a deep sadness wash over me. Owen had always been the one to look after me, and now, in death, he was still protecting me. But I couldn't help but wonder if he truly understood the extent of Evelyn's greed. After the funeral, I returned home with Frank, Lucas, and Mia. The house felt emptier, a stark contrast to the lively gatherings we once had. "Mom, is Uncle Owen really gone?" Lucas asked, his voice shaky. I nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, sweetheart. But we need to remember him for who he was, not just for what he left behind." Mia hugged me tightly. "I miss him already," she whispered, and I felt a wave of grief wash over me again. In the days that followed, Evelyn's behavior became increasingly erratic. She showed up at our house unannounced, demanding to see Owen's belongings. "I have a right to his things," she screamed, her desperation spilling over. "Evelyn, you need to leave," Frank said firmly, standing protectively in front of the door. "You have no claim to anything here." "I'll fight you for this," she threatened, her voice a low growl. "You think this is over?" As time passed, it became clear that Evelyn wasn't going to give up easily. I knew I needed to take action to protect Owen's legacy and my family. I reached out to a private investigator, hoping to uncover more about Evelyn's illegal activities and her motives. "Why do you want to investigate her?" the investigator asked as we sat in his dimly lit office. "She's already been cut out of the will." "Because she's dangerous," I replied, my voice steady. "I want to make sure she can't hurt my family any further." Days turned into weeks as the investigator dug deeper into Evelyn's past. Meanwhile, my family was trying to heal from our loss, but Evelyn's presence loomed like a dark cloud. "Mom, do you think she'll ever stop?" Lucas asked one night at dinner, his brows furrowed in concern. "I don't know, honey," I said, pushing my food around on the plate. "But we need to stay strong. We'll figure this out together." Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I received a call from the investigator. "Carla, I have some information about Evelyn that you need to hear," he said, his voice serious. "What is it?" I asked, my heart racing. "She's involved in illegal activities, money laundering, to be specific. And there's more. She's been using Owen's name to cover her tracks," he explained. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "She's been funneling money through fake businesses and could be in serious trouble." "I suggest you keep this information close to your chest for now," he advised. I hung up, my mind racing. Evelyn was more dangerous than I had thought. It was time to take a stand, but I knew I had to be careful. The last thing I wanted was to put my family in harm's way. As I sat in the quiet of my home that evening, I felt a mix of fear and determination. I was prepared to protect my family and Owen's legacy at all costs, but I also knew that this was only the beginning of a much larger battle. Little did I know, the real fight was yet to come. The days after our family meeting felt charged with tension. Evelyn was like a storm cloud on the horizon, darkening our every thought and action. Each morning, I'd wake up with a knot in my stomach, wondering what she would do next. Despite my best efforts to maintain a sense of normalcy for Lucas and Mia, the unease hung in the air like a thick fog. One afternoon, while I was helping Mia with her homework, the doorbell rang. My heart raced as I exchanged a worried glance with her. "Stay here," I whispered, feeling the weight of the moment. I crept to the door, peering through the peephole. My stomach dropped. Standing there was Evelyn, looking both determined and unhinged. "Carla, I know you're in there. Open up," she shouted, her voice filled with a mix of anger and desperation. I hesitated, considering my options. I could ignore her, but I knew that wouldn't stop her. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation. "What do you want, Evelyn?" I called through the door, trying to keep my voice steady. "I just want to talk." "I deserve to know what's going on," she yelled, pounding on the door. "I'm still Owen's wife." "Not anymore," I replied, feeling a surge of confidence. "You lost that right when you chose greed over family." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "You think this is over? I will get what's mine." She turned to leave, but not before I noticed the glimmer of a phone in her hand, as if she was ready to record our confrontation. The encounter left me shaken, but I knew I had to protect my family. I immediately called Frank, my heart racing. "Evelyn just showed up at the house," I told him, my voice barely above a whisper. "What did she want?" he asked, concern evident in his tone. "She's angry and desperate." "I'm afraid she might do something drastic," I admitted, feeling the weight of my words. "We need to take this seriously." "I'll be home as soon as I can," he replied, and I could hear the determination in his voice. "Let's talk about our options." As I waited for Frank to return, I felt a mix of dread and anticipation. I knew Evelyn was becoming more dangerous, and I had to prepare for whatever she had planned. When Frank arrived, he looked grave. "We need to think about getting a restraining order," he suggested, pacing the living room. "This isn't just about her trying to claim what she thinks is hers. It's about keeping our family safe." "I agree," I said, feeling the tension of our situation. "I won't let her intimidate us." The next day, we met with a lawyer who specialized in family disputes. "Evelyn's actions are concerning, and it's wise to take preventive measures," the lawyer said. "We can file for a restraining order based on her behavior." As we discussed the details, I felt a mix of fear and empowerment. I knew we were doing the right thing, but the thought of escalating this conflict terrified me. That evening, after our meeting, I sat down with Lucas and Mia. "We're taking steps to ensure your safety," I explained. "Evelyn won't be able to come near us anymore." Lucas looked thoughtful. "Do you think she'll really try to hurt us?" "I don't know, but we have to be prepared," I answered, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Mia, sensing the heaviness in the room, chimed in. I want to help. I can keep an eye out for her.
Thank you, Mia.
Your support means everything, I said, pulling her into a hug. As the days passed, we filed the necessary paperwork and awaited the court's decision. Each knock on the door sent my heart racing, and every rustle outside felt magnified. Evelyn's shadow loomed over us, and I realized that the fight was far from over. In the back of my mind, I could hear Evelyn's words echoing. I will get what's mine. I wasn't just fighting for my brother's legacy anymore. I was fighting for my family's safety. The storm was gathering, and I knew that the real confrontation was coming. The day of the court hearing arrived with an eerie sense of calm, a stark contrast to the turmoil I felt inside. Frank and I prepared ourselves, knowing this was a crucial moment. We had filed for a restraining order against Evelyn, and I could only hope that the judge would see through her facade. As we entered the courthouse, my heart raced. The sterile environment felt oppressive, filled with hushed conversations and the occasional rustle of papers. I spotted Evelyn sitting at the far end of the room, her posture rigid and her face a mask of defiance. She caught my eye and flashed a chilling smile that sent a shiver down my spine. "Stay focused," Frank whispered, squeezing my hand gently. I nodded, trying to regain my composure. When our case was called, we walked up to the front, and I took a deep breath. "Your Honor, I'm here to request a restraining order against my brother's ex-wife, Evelyn," I began, my voice steady despite the anxiety bubbling beneath the surface. "Her behavior has become increasingly erratic, and I fear for my family's safety." Evelyn leaped to her feet, her voice loud and shrill. "This is ridiculous. I'm the victim here. You're just trying to take everything from me." The judge raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Order in the court," he said firmly, turning to Evelyn. "You will have your chance to speak." I watched as Evelyn tried to spin a web of sympathy around herself, portraying herself as the heartbroken widow who had been wronged. "I loved Owen. I deserve what he left behind," she cried, her voice cracking. When it was my turn to respond, I stood taller, feeling the weight of the moment. "Your Honor, Owen made it clear before his death that he wanted to protect his true family from Evelyn's manipulation and greed. He transferred all his assets to me because he knew the truth about her actions," I said, feeling the strength of my conviction. Evelyn's face paled as she realized that I was prepared to reveal everything. "You don't know what you're talking about," she shouted, but the uncertainty in her voice hinted at her growing fear. I took a deep breath, knowing I had to push forward. "The investigator I hired has uncovered evidence of Evelyn's illegal activities, including money laundering. She's been using Owen's name to cover her tracks," I stated, my voice unwavering. The judge looked intrigued. "Do you have proof of these allegations?" "Yes, Your Honor. I have documentation from the investigator, along with witness statements," I replied, handing over the papers to the court clerk. The atmosphere shifted as the judge reviewed the evidence. I could feel the tension in the room, and I knew this was a turning point. I glanced at Evelyn, who was now visibly shaken. As the judge called for a recess to review the materials, I turned to Frank, who looked proud yet concerned. "You did great, Carla," he said quietly, giving me a reassuring nod. After what felt like an eternity, the judge returned. "After reviewing the evidence and testimonies, I have decided to grant the restraining order against Evelyn. She is to stay at least 500 feet away from Carla and her family," he announced. A wave of relief washed over me. But Evelyn wasn't done yet. "You can't do this. I'll fight you. You'll regret this," she yelled, her voice trembling with rage. As we left the courtroom, I felt lighter, as if a heavy burden had been lifted. I glanced back at Evelyn one last time, and in that moment, I saw not just anger but fear of losing everything she had sought to control. Once outside, I turned to Frank, Lucas, and Mia, who stood together, united. "We did it," I said, my voice filled with emotion. Lucas smiled, relief evident in his eyes. "I knew we could," he said, wrapping his arms around Mia and me. As we drove home, I felt a renewed sense of hope. The road ahead would not be easy, but we were stronger together. Owen had protected us even in his absence, and I vowed to honor his legacy by ensuring our family remained close and united. Though the storm had passed for now, I knew that challenges would always arise. But whatever lay ahead, we would face it together, as a family. We had weathered the worst, and together, we would continue to thrive, carrying Owen's memory in our hearts.